Hello, everybody. It's time for a Requel update. And I got a new mic for my earpieces here, so hopefully these will work better. Um, I'm in the car, and I've been thinking, recently, last year, whatever, I had done a lot of pitches for Dracula because, we were kind of steeped in revisions over the past year of vampires and Dracula myths and lore. And the other one, that really pulls from literature. And I didn't really have a thought on this one yet, but I do have some thoughts that I'd like to get out before we get two newer versions this year, whatever. I don't remember when they're all coming out. But anyways, is Frankenstein. Now, these monsters have been on my mind a lot, not just because of revisiting them, but also I'm very excited for Universal opening the Dark Universe, uh, part of their theme park, and I really cannot wait to venture out there. But Frankenstein is another one of those that has two versions. You have the universal version, which is your Boris Karloff base, which has become so soaked in pop culture that it's hard to think of the character without referencing that, because I feel like everything has stemmed from that almost. Um, and that was one of my problems with Van Helsing, is that it was still universal, but then they tried to change it up and do something different when they should have stuck with their universal based iconography, because their characters are different than the book characters. But that's another discussion that I've had before. But with Frankenstein, there's the book and pulling from the book, and I really feel that the book has never been truly justified. We've gotten versions that I think tap more into that. The Mary Shelley's Frankenstein with Kenneth Branagh and Robert De Niro, which I do not like Robert De Niro as the creature, the monster. And I'm going to say this too, just throwing this out there. They always say, it's Frankenstein is the doctor, not the creature. Well, it's kind of both, because he talks to him as a son, so Frankenstein could be his surname. Sometimes they've called him Adam, and things like that. Penny Dreadful did a really good twist version of the monster creature. And I think you can use Frankenstein for the monster and for the doctor. It works both ways, as there is a father, son, creator, creation relationship. I think that this is another one of those examples. The book is so thick and dense that we need to do a mini series. And I think when it comes to books and literature, that can be my preferred method, because these books are so large and dense and they're paced. And we've seen so many versions of these that have cut things out, but we haven't got that true version where we can hold up, like, this is the book. This is what the story is. Um, Coming up, we have a version, I think it's just called The Bride, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, starring Christian Bale as the creature. And then we have Guillermo del Toro's version, and he's wanted to do his version for years, and I'm excited for that. His Pinocchio he did had a lot of Frankenstein themes and imagery in it. So I'd like to get some ideas out before we are treated to these newer versions. One of my first ideas is, I think that it would be interesting to get to know the doctor. I have two different ideas, okay? And they're both kind of similar, but it's like you can either do one I think could be fun. I say fun. To set it in a, like, 1940s. I think 1940s would be interesting for either version of my idea. But you could have one that is a more like the daughter of the doctor, but then that takes away from the book, and it's about creating a woman. That could be a sequel idea, I guess. I'm just thinking. But I think where we're what we're missing is the pathos of the book, learning who the creature, the monster is, and refining the monster as we go. And I think Penny Dreadful did it the best with having these versions and like this kind of journey arc for the creature, and I'd like to see that. But what I'd like to see is I'd like to see maybe where the doctor or the doctor's assistant is a little bit more unhinged. So what if the doctor's assistant was more of a serial killer, right? And the idea, and like I said, I want to do classic to the book, but at the same time, I think it'd be interesting if we have this idea where the doctor is looking at aspects of people, and I guess you have to decide how you want to play the doctor, as this mad scientist or as this evil person, because you could say that the doctor really is this evil force, or you could play it that the doctor is just kind of lost. But I like the idea of them gathering parts almost from specific people, to where the doctor doesn't realize that the assistant is murdering people for certain things. Like he cuts the hands off a craftsman or a musician, something like that, to take the perfect hands. Um, he takes the brain of like a professor, but then loses that brain or something. I don't know. But the idea is we really craft the creature from elements of specific people instead of just really being um, whatever. Because most versions don't really touch on the individual parts of the creature. Most versions just seem to let it be as it is. So it is kind of funny because I know I sound like I'm being a little contradictory. I'm talking about, oh, I want to go back and do the book and do the book right. But at the same time, I'm like, hey, I want to do this thing with where the doctor and maybe his assistant is hunting people to make the perfect man. And I don't know if that's like, I feel like that's two pitches in there. There's two versions of the monster, the film. Okay, like let's do a classic miniseries to the book, and then let's do this kind of updated version where it's maybe, Frankenstein, the doctor's daughter, great granddaughter, or something, and they are murdering people for certain aspects and the ideal to make the perfect person. If the book takes place in the 1800s, I don't know, have the daughter in the 40s, 30s. I always like it set in the past. It just has a nice feel to it. Sometimes being set in the modern day, you lose something. But I don't know. You could still do it in the modern day. Don't do it in America, though. Set it over in Eastern Europe. I don't even know. I think Frankenstein is an interesting story. I think there's been a lot of different versions. Even one that I haven't got to revisit that I wanted to was Victor Frankenstein. And I think that you can tell a story where you make the monsters to be this sympathetic, you make the doctor to be the monster, and vice versa. But I think there's no version that I'm like, oh, this is the best version of this story. Now, there's some I haven't seen that I try to be a purist as much as I can and see as many of the versions that exist. And I don't know. I would like a really great version of the story. Because when I watched Universal's Frankenstein, every year I edited together Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein as one film, and that's how I watch it. Just a simple edit, basically. I took out the kind of some of the opening credits for Frankenstein, so it starts a little bit more bleak, just kind of fades in from black. And then I just took out the start of Bride of Frankenstein, where it's Mary Shelley and her friends, writing the story, which could be, interesting, but took that out and just had Frankenstein, the film, then just cut together the scenes where he's in the windmill, so there's a smooth transition. And then I took out a couple of shots with Dr. Pretorius's experiments with the people's shrunken bottles. I felt that was a little weird and stuff, but it makes a really nice feature to watch them together because you get this really nice arc of a lot of the characters. But I think it would be interesting to see a story with the bride more, and I know that's coming, where there is eventually some sort of relationship built between the creature, Frankenstein, and the bride. Um, I also think, that there's a story out there. We're talking about all the monsters I had pitched. Uh, I had done a pitch for the brides with Dracula, with all his brides. But it'd be interesting if you did something called the brides, and you had not only Dracula's brides, but you had um, Frankenstein's, creation, its bride, and she's like a scientist herself, and we don't realize that she is, the actual second creation of the Doctor. I'd name her Elsa after the actress. But that is, I guess, my Frankenstein pitch. Kind of all over the place, but I just think there's some cool elements that you could incorporate into the story.